I'm Kelly Watkins. I am a cognitive behavioural therapist and a forensic psychologist. And throughout this workshop, I'm going to help you to tap into your resilience. And within that, we are going to be looking at the psychological skills which I have learned over the years. I've practiced with my clients, I've practiced myself, and I know that this set of skills that we're going to go over today are going to be so helpful to help you to understand your level of resilience more, but being able to perhaps maintain your resilience, but also to boost your resilience. So we're going to be coming at it at 3 angles to help you to really understand how your resilience is at the moment, giving you those really practical tips and techniques and skills that are going to help you to be able to move through life with the bounce back ability that resilience gives you. And we know with resilience there are so many definitions, and we'll go on to them in a little bit, but just to let you know that sometimes our resilience can falter because of what's going on in the world, and that is completely normal. And there's even been studies to say that some of us are actually born with a genetic predisposition to be resilient, where some of us aren't. So it really isn't sometimes your fault if you struggle to be resilient in situations. It can be how we were brought up, or even the family we were born into. So as I said, all of these skills are going to really help you to understand your resilience more, understand how it connects to your mental health, understanding the 3 C's of resilience and how to do something about them, challenging what goes on in your head, what goes on at your core, and being able to manage and regulate your emotions and free yourself from emotions that are overwhelming you. Thank you so much for joining in, and I hope you enjoy the workshop as much as I enjoyed developing it. And remember to use your ebook throughout and beyond to help you to continue to practice those skills, because it is practice that is going to help to make that difference in your life. Hope you enjoy. So what is resilience? Resilience has been described as basically our ability to be able to get back after difficult things in life, not to let things in life push us back, but be able to come back stronger than ever. Some psychologists have seen it as our ability to bounce back. Something that I always say with my clients is it is your bounce back ability. It allows you to be able to change course of where your emotions may be able to take you. It allows you to be able to focus on your goals and still be able to move forward regardless of what has been put in your way. And I think this year, now more than ever, we have been placed in a world where we've faced many different setbacks for reasons that are going on in the world, but obviously we've all got our personal reasons as well that may have set us back. And throughout this workshop, I'm going to be able to teach you ways in which you can learn to bounce back, to increase your bounce back ability, but also being able to maintain this for the rest of your life moving forward. I think that's a really exciting thing, is when we learn skills, those skills are going to be able to, they're always going to be there, they're always going to be things that we can use to be able to help us. And there are so many different factors, as you will see in the ebook, that people have identified as characteristics that make someone more able to bounce back. Sometimes people see it as if someone's got a more positive outlook on life, or they've got a more positive attitude. If they're able to regulate their emotions in a way that allows them to still feel your emotions, because your emotions are valid, but being able to regulate any ones that are overwhelming. And also to be able to see that any sort of challenges that we may face, see them as opportunities for growth rather than a setback. And just those areas are things that can really help to build our resilience, as well as things like humour, being able to respond to helpful feedback, and to be able to be optimism regardless of what life throws at us. And when we look at resilience and mental health, you can probably already think that there is quite a connection between the two. And when we look at the root of a lot of common mental health problems, mainly depression and anxiety are the most common, but really at the root of it all is our lack of belief that we can succeed in a situation. And then because of that, we overthink, or we think that we're better to be overprepared rather than to take a step back. So it is our overestimation of the threat, but our underestimation of the ability to cope. And within that, we can use resilience to really help us to be able to come over the things that we think that we can't cope with, and being able to increase our resilience and our ability to believe that we can be able to get past things. And when we look at that area of resilience, we can see that sometimes if we are struggling with our mental health, that we will underestimate really how we can deal with situations, and that often means that our resilience can be quite low to different challenges or to different things that happen in our life. But also that when we do struggle with resilience, then our symptoms of mental health are likely to increase. So it really impacts on both areas, and things that we have to be able to manage. So really resilience can be at the core of helping us to improve our mental health, and also being able to maintain our mental health as well, which both areas are really, really important. Okay, so we're going to work into really trying out some exercises now. So Glenn Schiraldi in 2017 said that there were 3 C's of resilience. That is commitment, control, and challenge. Commitment is the belief that what you are doing is important. Control is believing that you have some influence over outcomes of events. And challenge is viewing a potential stressful event as a challenge instead of a threat. So firstly, with commitment, we really need to understand what is our why. Why are we doing things? So I want us to try something out now. I want you to think of your goal. What is your goal? So I want to ... because ... So think now, what is it? What do you want to achieve? What is your goal? Got it? Okay. So now I want you to ask yourself, why? So why are you doing that? Why is that your goal? Okay. Now we're going to ask ourselves, why again? So why has that second thing come out of your first goal? So why is that important to you? Why does it matter? Ask yourself why again. But why? Why is that something that's come out from that? And you guessed it, now you've got your next layer. Ask yourself why again. Why does this area matter? Why is it important? And the last time, why again? Now within that, we've gone really quite deep. You may not have got it this time, but come back to it another time. So starting off with your goal, I want to ... because. And then you want to ask yourself why 5 times. Why is it important to you? Why does it matter? Why now? And as you do this, you're going to get deeper and deeper to really understand what is going on. What is going on for you? What is important to you? What is your why? And then when you've got that bottom part, start to think of how you can work towards that. What things can you put in place? What tasks can you do every single day? What goals can you set? The SMART goals. So we're talking about a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And once you have that, as I said, you want to start doing something every single day. So that belief that something is important to you, no matter what it was or what it is in your life. So that is commitment, the first C. The second is control. Now, within control, we are living in a world where we feel that we rarely have control over much. But it's about how we use our mindset. So focusing on the things that we can control and letting go of the things that we cannot. And within this, just think that if you are going to work and you're driving to work and you get a flat tire, that is out of your control, but how we respond to it is within our control. So instead of allowing ourselves to get wound up, I'm going to be late, it's going to go wrong, I didn't have money for this, they may all be important, but it's making you feel more and more like you're out of control. So have a think, if your car was to break down, if it was something was to happen that was out of your control, what area can you gain control over? With the car breaking down, you may have cover with some sort of roadside assistance. You may have a spare tyre. You may not have to change your tyre. It may be that you have to call someone to help you, or it may be that you've got one of those spray things that fill up your tyre. Those are the areas that you can control. So focus on that. Don't focus and allow your mind to grow off on this narrative of everything's going to go wrong, my day's gone wrong, I'm having a terrible week, having a terrible year. Our mind can spiral out of control so quickly that it's really difficult to really gain control. And when there are things that are outside of control, it's about letting them go. And that can be quite difficult. So it's about recognizing that some things are not within our control, focusing on what we can't, and simply allowing the other bits to let go. And you may want to do this using your breath. So as you breathe in and breathe out, and as you breathe out, let that thought go. And continue to do that. It may help you to visualize certain things like clouds floating past, leaves on a stream, waves flowing back and forth, a pebble being dropped into a lake. All of the things allow things to just float away, and that's what you want to do when you're letting things go. So that one takes sometimes some work, but it's something that can be really, really helpful. Then challenge. So seeing things that are potentially stressful as a challenge rather than a threat. And going back to the car example, it's really, really easy to see things as a threat. Be like, oh my God, this is going so wrong. Everything's going to go wrong. But if you speak to anyone who has been successful in business or just in their life, it's about that bounce back ability. It's being able to bounce back after a stressful situation and to see it as an opportunity for growth or an opportunity to learn rather than a threat. Again, going back to the car example, so thinking, okay, I've got a flat tyre, what can I do about it? Again, we've already recognised what is in our control and what isn't in our control. But seeing is something that we can learn. Oh, that's a really good opportunity for me to call so-and-so. I haven't spoken to them in a while. They know how to change a tyre. They can talk me through it. Seeing it as an opportunity, or okay, maybe I should go and get the rest of my car checked out. It's an opportunity for us to learn. And if we're able to reframe our mind, then we are more likely to be able to overcome the next set of problems because we've got it in our mind and we know how we can get over it. We can see things as a potential for growth rather than a threat. And they are the 3 C's of resilience. And now we're going to move on to a next little trick. So as you saw with the 3 C's of resilience, how we think about something can have a massive impact into how we feel, how we behave, and that is really the crux of CBT, looking at your thoughts, feelings and behaviours and physical sensations. And when we are looking at our thoughts have the ability to change how we're feeling. Think about an example of when you've had a negative thought. You could be having quite a good day, then a negative thought sneaks into your mind and all of a sudden you get sent on this spiral of negativity, and we can get drawn down into that, and that can impact how resilient we are. If we're so focused on everything that's going wrong or all the negativity in our life, how we're able to build our resilience and really understand how we can be resilient. And a technique in CBT that we use is cognitive restructuring. So this is a technique that allows us to recognize our negative thoughts and being able to do something about them. And by doing something about them, you can bet that is going to impact on our resilience. So how we do this is just think of a common negative thought that you have. It can be anything. And hold that thought in mind. I think when you have this negative thought, it could be self-doubt, it could be self-criticism, it could be frustration, it could be upset, it could be self-loathing, or it could be based in anxiety. What is that negative thought? It could be something that happened today or recently. How does that negative thought make you feel? Really, really allow that to come over your mind and notice how that feels in your stomach. If your shoulders change, if you're tense up, recognize how it makes you feel. Now here is the cognitive restructuring part. It's very similar to the reframing that we spoke about in the 3 C's. So within this, you want to recognize what your negative thought is. It may help you to maybe write it down if you want to. And now I want you to look at what is the evidence for that thought being true. So, is it a fact or an opinion? Is there any undeniable evidence that you have that proves that your negative thought is true? And write that down if you like, or just think it. Imagine if you were defending this thought in a court of law and you had to defend that this was the truth without a doubt, what would you say? Okay. So now, what facts do you have that prove that your thought is not true? Is it an opinion rather than a fact? What would others say about this situation? What is another way of looking at it? Again, think if you was on the opposing team in the court and you were trying to prove that that fact is not true, what would you say? That thought is not true, sorry. So now we've got the negative thought, got the evidence for, got the evidence against. And now I want us to come up with an alternative, a more balanced thought. So what would be more helpful to think in that situation? What is the bigger picture? What advice would you give someone else if they came to you with that thought? Or what do you think that someone who cares about you would say if you told them that negative thought out loud? Asking yourself, is that negative thought really as important as it may seem? And try and come up with an alternative balanced thought using those questions to maybe help you. And that is cognitive restructuring. It may seem like a long process initially, but once you get used to really recognizing your negative thought and grabbing onto it, and this isn't to really, you don't want to make yourself feel so attached to the thoughts, but if you try and block a thought out, you make that thought so much stronger. If I was to say to you, do not think of a red car, whatever you do not think of a red car, you're going to think of a red car. So if you are trying to block all these negative thoughts out without doing anything about them, they're just going to get stronger, they're going to overwhelm you. And as we spoke about how they're going to impact on your emotions, they're going to impact on your resilience. If you're feeling negative and you're feeling really low, you're not going to be able to bounce back to things that life throws at you. So being able to use this to challenge our thoughts, to be able to understand them, is a really, really great way. So you identify negative thought, evidence for it being true, evidence for it not being true, and what is an alternative, a more balanced thought. And that is cognitive restructuring. But within our thoughts, imagine a tree or a plant. So we have the leaves are our thoughts. That's kind of what's going on the surface. Then we have the trunk, which is our rules and assumptions. They are rules or assumptions that we have set from a young age. It could be that we've learned them from somebody else. And they are things that we we say to ourselves, like, I should do something, I must do something, or if I do this, then ... or I shouldn't, or I mustn't. They are rules and assumptions. But at the roots of the tree, we have our core beliefs. And these can be really self-limiting beliefs if they're negative. And I want us to really understand what our core beliefs are, because I think it's key when we are looking at challenging our thoughts. We need to understand if there's anything in our core that's limiting us even further. Because if we have those things that are limiting us from the core, it's going to be really difficult to move forward and to be able to build our resilience. If we're able to challenge those negative thoughts and those negative core beliefs, we are going to be in much better headspace. We're going to be having a more positive, more optimistic outlook, and we're going to be able to deal with difficult situations that come up rather than allowing ourselves to be swallowed by them and engulfed by this negativity that we're not able to really deal with anything. So using your negative core belief, your negative thought that we did in the previous exercise, if you was able to think of one, I want you to ask yourself, if that thought was true, what would that say about me? Say, for example, your thought could be, I don't look good in anything. So that's your thought. So if that thought was true, what would that say about me? It could be that I don't look good. Okay, so now we're down to the next level. And we ask ourselves again, if that thought was true, what does that say about me? So I don't look good in anything. Nothing suits me. If that thought was true, what would that say about me? That I'm unable to wear the things I want. Okay, again, we're getting deeper. And then ask yourself again, if that thought was true, what does that say about me? That I am not how I should be, my body's not how I should be. Okay, if that thought was true, what would that say about you? I'm not pretty enough. If that thought was true, what would that say about me? I'm not good enough. And when we get to those I am statements, they are our core belief. It can be really, really tough to get down there. But you just work from your negative thought. Keep asking yourself, if that thought was true, what would that say about me? You'll see in the ebook there's other questions that you can ask, and sometimes it's helpful to stay with one question, or you may want to mix it up. You continue to go down until you get to an I am statement. So we got to, with that example, I'm not good enough. And that I'm not good enough, if you think that's at the roots of your tree, that's at your core. So imagine what thoughts that's spurting off, maybe comparing yourself to others. When you have a setback, seeing it like a threat and not a challenge. Feeling that you're not good enough, so nothing that you do is of value. Now you can now see how this is linking to the 3 C's of resilience. And you can see how that could impact on your everyday. So if that's impacting us every day, imagine what throughout this year, that's probably even impacting us even more, that feeling of not being good enough. So what can we do about it? When we get to our negative core belief, we then want to think, okay, what would be a more balanced way of looking at that? What would be the opposite of I'm not good enough? Okay, I am good enough. But does that sit right with you? A lot of time with clients, that I'm good enough doesn't feel believable. So it's going to be really difficult to work on. However, I am enough, slightly more believable for a lot of people. So thinking of what your negative core belief is, and then we want to balance it out. So you may want to think, okay, what is the polar opposite of it? So I'm a failure, I'm successful, I'm worthless, I'm worthy. Or you may want to go somewhere in the middle ground, such as that I'm not good enough being I am enough. And then when we do that, we then want to look for evidence. every day. This exercise is great to be done every day. And you want to look at evidence that proves that you are enough. And you may even think to yourself, okay, what would someone who is enough, what would they be like? What are their characteristics? Would they have friends? Would they eat well? Would they look after themselves physically? Would they shower? Would they have a job? Would they be able to take time out for themselves? Thinking of all of those characteristics can be super, super helpful. So you want to think of all the characteristics of the positive or the more balanced core belief. And when you have that, as I said, every day you want to look for 3 to 5 or 1 to 3, how you feel, pieces of evidence that prove that your positive core belief is true or your negative core belief is not true. So it could be things like taking time out for self-care, so doing some yoga. It could be doing some meditation. It could be taking time out and reading our favourite book. It could be cooking ourselves our favourite meal. It could be standing up to someone. It could be receiving a compliment. It could be making ourselves a nice drink or simply just brushing our teeth. All of those things prove that you are enough. So you just want to be able to prove that your positive core belief is true. And within that, that is something that you can do every day, and it's a great way. And you can even think about adding it into your gratitude journaling. So thinking about what are you grateful for. So at the end of your day, reflecting on what you're grateful for, but also reflecting on what has happened today that has proved that I am whatever your positive core belief is. This is going to start to shift the way you look at the world, because you're going to be focusing on the positive things. So when we spoke about at the beginning, the optimism is something that people with resilience seem to have. It's going to help you to have that positive attitude. It's going to help you to really look at the world in a more positive light, but instead of looking at all the things that are going wrong. And it's also going to help you being able to overcome obstacles, because you're going to be more resilient. You're going to be more in a better mindset. And it can take some time, but it's a really good way. And in CBT, we call it a positive belief record. And that is, so if you wanted to look at more, but there is a lot in the ebook about that. But they are really good ways to be able to understand what your core belief is and understand how you can balance it out and how you can change that. And once you start to change that negativity at your core, you're going to change the negativity of your roots and of your leaves. And in turn, you're going to be able to manage your negative thoughts. They all link together. So that is a really good way to really understand what's going on in your head and being able to manage it. As a CBT therapist and a psychologist, we need to look at all areas. So when we're looking at resilience, it's not just about our thoughts, even though our thoughts are super important because they inform how we feel, how we perceive an event, how we react to a situation. But they are very, very closely linked to how we feel. Our thoughts are generally the things that change how we feel. It's not sometimes our emotions changing by ourselves. We often have a narrative constantly going on in our mind. So that's why it's super important to be able to challenge our negative thinking, to be able to manage our negative core beliefs. And within resilience, we need to look at our emotions. So it's not to say that if someone is resilient, they don't have strong feelings, because that's just not true. We all have strong feelings sometimes, depending on the situation. Or as we've seen this year, when we are in a world that is quite turbulent and constantly changing, even how our brain is made up, the prefrontal cortex finds it really difficult to deal with change, which then impacts our thoughts, which impacts on our feelings. And as a this year, now more than ever, we've been in such a turbulent world, which is why we need to look at emotional regulation skills. So when we look at emotional regulation, it is simply how we regulate our emotions. So How do we manage those overwhelming emotions? How do we do things that really help us? And for this, I look to a lot of CBT skills and also DBT, which is Dialectical Behavioural Therapy. And it's basically about how you look at things on the opposite. It's a really simple way of doing it, but there are some really great skills for emotional regulation in there because it's often used with people who really struggle to regulate their own emotions. So really, one way you can look at it is altering your temperature. If you think when we have strong emotions, we get quite hot. Our heart rate starts to increase, and we can get clammy, we can get sweaty. So it's about being able to cool ourselves down. How we can do this is to have a cold shower, obviously, or it could be about placing a cold flannel on your face. Another way to do this is to put your face into cold water. Now you want to get the water to go above your inner ear, your ear opening, and when you do that, your brain thinks that you're diving into water. So your brain then does something called the dive response. So it really changes where your thoughts are going, where all your emotions are going, and focuses on survival really because it thinks you're diving in water. But all you're doing is placing your head underwater in a basin's fine. And also you don't hold yourself down that long. 10 seconds is great. That is just enough to get your body to think you're in a dive response. So it just changes how your whole world is looking because you're not thinking about, oh my God, this is going wrong, or they hate me, or my world's falling apart, or I'm a failure. All those negative thoughts, so those core beliefs that we were talking about a minute ago. And just being able to do that, as I said, it stops that. It's a really good skill. Sometimes we use them in crises. So that skill is really good if your emotions are really, really, really overwhelming because it just completely changes your brain. Your attention is going on to the dive response, not where it was before. Another way to cool down could be holding ice cubes in your hand, or just putting your hands in ice, again, not for too long. Obviously when we're changing our temperature, be aware of any health concerns that you may have. Another way to regulate our emotions is to do some physical exercise. So this could be star jumps, could be jumping jacks, it could be running on the spot. Often when we have a lot of emotion, especially maybe anger, we have a lot of built up energy, we feel really, really tense, so we need to let it go. And being able to do some sort of exercise is really, really great for that. Again, you want to do it within your own physical health abilities, and that will really help you to release that energy. And instead of releasing it maybe by getting into an argument with someone, it releases it in a way that allows you to deal with what you're feeling. And again, it's when we regulate our emotions, like when we challenge our thoughts, we're not blocking out the emotions, we're just managing them, we're regulating them in a way that is better for us. So yes, instead of shouting at someone, getting into an argument, even maybe getting into a physical fight, you put your energy into exercise or something to get it out. Another great way is using soothing music. So you want to use music to soothe you. So we want a calm, slow tempo. The slower tempo actually changes how your mind is working. It slows it down. It's really difficult to get super, super angry if you're listening to slow, relaxing music. And think of it the opposite. If you are angry or you're upset, if you play music that matches that emotion, think how much that increases the emotion. If you're angry and you start listening to, heavy rock or rap or something like that, kind of hypes you up so you get even more angry. Or if you're feeling sad and you listen to sad songs, you start crying because you are matching your emotions with what you're feeling and what you're listening to. Whereas DBT, so the Dialectical Behavioural Therapy, teach you to use opposite. So if you're feeling that overwhelming emotion that is kind of really pulling you in one way, using the soothing emotion just soothes you. It soothes that emotion down and just regulates it. Grounding techniques are another way, or distraction techniques are great ways for regulating your emotions. So grounding techniques are techniques that ground you into the moment. So we can try a quick one now. So look around you and notice 5 things that you can see. 4 things that you can hear. 3 things that you can feel. 2 things that you can smell. And 1 thing that you can taste. Don't worry, as you get to the end, that kind of gets really difficult. But as you were doing that, was you thinking about anything else rather than what we were doing? Possibly not, because it's really difficult for your mind to concentrate fully on something else and to be still bogged down by what we're thinking or what we're feeling. So grounding techniques can work with regulating our emotions, but they can also work with overcoming those overwhelming negative thoughts as well. So it works in both ways. So yeah, they're grounding skills, but distraction techniques as well, even just counting the colours around you. So counting all of those browns, it just brings yourself out of your head, therefore out of your emotions and into your outside world. And that is what we want to do when we are regulating ourselves. It's bringing ourselves out. It's being able to not get overwhelmed by how we're feeling, but being able to distract ourselves. And when we distract our mind, as we mentioned, our thoughts influence our emotions. If our mind's distracted by something else, it's really difficult to kind of keep that emotion going because you're not thinking about it. And if you notice that emotion is getting stronger, it's probably because you're still thinking. So it's about using the techniques again. And that's something that's really important to say, is that if you do this technique and then you stop and your emotions go back to where they were before, they may not be as intense, but practice another skill or simply repeat it and continue to do so. And if you haven't done this before, it's going to be really, really difficult to get your head around and to remember to do it. So it may be helpful to have things written about to remind you of when to do it. But just practice is the key. Like with the cognitive restructuring, like with the challenging your negative core belief. With the emotion regulation skills, they are skills, so they need to be practiced. But I promise you, they will impact on your resilience in a really, really helpful way. The last emotional regulation technique we're going to look at before we move over to an emotional freedom technique is paced breathing. So this is a slow, deliberate, deep breathing exercise. And as we breathe slowly, we are changing the nervous system in our brain. We are increasing and decreasing our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system just by slowing down our breath. And if we are able to do that, we are able to change how we're feeling. And just simply using our breath. Our breath is an amazing tool that we often really forget about. So you can try it by breathing in for the count of 3 and out for the count of 5. Or you could breathe in for the count of 5, out for the count of 8. Or breathe in for the count of 7, and breathe out for the count of 11. So breathe in for 7, out for 11. And when we do that, we always breathe out longer than what we breathe in. And that because when we breathe out longer, it allows our body to kind of relax like that. And that almost like simulates when you sink down into bed, so that relaxing feeling. But it also allows the air to really come in and out of your lungs. So either in for 3, out for 5, in for 5, out for 8, in for 7, out for 11. And it really depends on your lung capacity, if you're used to doing breathing exercises or if you're not. So start where you may want to start at the beginning, and then as you can see, you can then move up, or you may start where you think you know you would do it. And within that, you would want to repeat that exercise until you feel calmed. It may take a couple of times, it may take more than that, whatever it takes. And that, as we said, it changes your nervous system, it slows it down, chills it out, and that is obviously going to impact your emotional regulation. Another thing because of that, just to add more kind of evidence to why it's helpful, the counting in your mind. When you're counting that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, doing that in your mind, it's really, really difficult to have two continuous streams of thoughts going on in your mind, unless you are someone who experiences auditory hallucinations or you hear voices. Other than that, it can be really difficult for us to have the thoughts running through our mind and still counting. So the counting almost interrupts the negative thoughts or the thoughts that are maybe making us feel overwhelmed, which are impacting on our emotions. So that's why the paced breathing is doubly helpful almost, because it manages to interrupt our thoughts but also regulate our emotions. Another really good emotion regulation using our breathing is square breathing. So breathing in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, hold for 3, in for 3. And that's the square breathing. It's another paced breathing exercise. The deeper breathe, as I said, the longer ones, obviously they're deeper breathing, but if you wanted to try a square breathing exercise, that again is really, really good for your emotional regulation. So they are the main emotion regulation skills, and now we're going to move over on to something else. So now we are going to talk about tapping. So you may have heard of tapping before, you may have not. So it's a technique otherwise known as the emotional freedom technique, and it is based on the meridians that we have in our body. It is using really ancient medicine and ancient understanding of our bodies to be able to release energy, otherwise known as our chi. And with tapping, it's been seen to help with stress, anxiety, low mood, chronic fatigue, so many different health and physical health and mental health concerns. And it is a super simple technique. And within a lot of research, there's been a lot of research going around about it recently, and it is actually shown that it can change how our brain works, which is incredible. There's a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is right in the center of your brain, and that is basically your alarm system in your brain. So if anything feels like it's threatening, or if it's scary, or if there's danger, your brain like sets off an alarm. That is your amygdala. That's a fight or flight response. You may have heard of that before. But when we are feeling not so resilient and struggling with maybe our mental health as well, our amygdala will perceive things in danger that's not that dangerous anymore. It could be that it's not that dangerous anymore because our amygdala is part of our old brain. It hasn't really changed that much. So in the past, obviously, we as cavemen and women, we needed that to really see the danger. But we don't often need it as much anymore, or the danger's changed. But if we are in stress, as I said, feeling anxious, when our resilience is maybe impacted, this will react to things that we don't really need it to react to. It could be going to a job interview and your amygdala's like saying like, oh my God, this is dangerous, because we're feeling stressed or wound up. Or it could be getting into a conversation that we've been avoiding because we feel so anxious, your brain's kind of going off again. Feeling angry, brain's going off again. And is the actual research from the Harvard Medical School has actually shown that by using the tapping technique, the emotional freedom technique, that this can either be turned off in stages where you don't need it, or reduces the impact that the actual kind of alarm system is having on the rest of your body. And I think that is super, super interesting. And there is so much more research that's going on about the emotional freedom technique, but I wanted for us to really try it out together, and hopefully for you to be able to practice it as well. And it's about, when we do it, we're rewiring the brain, so it's going to be something that may not come to you initially, or it could be something that you get. So it takes practice like everything, and it's about really you tap into the different meridian points, and you verbally, or sometimes mentally, address the root of what's going on for you, address the root of that emotion. And by tapping, it's basically allowing those blocked areas of energy to release and flow naturally, rather than to be able to be like clogged up, and making that emotion stronger and making us feel that we are less able to cope in a situation, or that perceiving that we are in a really dangerous situation when we're not. It is just our kind of amygdala, it's our emotional reaction. So within that, we want to really look at, as I said, the skills. So we're going to go through the steps of how you can use the tapping technique. So first of all, in the sequence, we want to really understand what is bothering you today. What is making you feel that overwhelming emotion? Could it be you're angry because you're tired best? Could it be that you're frustrated that your friend didn't call? Could it be that you feel like you've got too much on your plate? I really want you to home in on what is going on. And tapping works with really specific examples. So you want to make the example as specific as possible. And really identify what anger, what emotion you are feeling. So is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? Really identify what that is. So think about that for a few moments now. And then what you want to do is to, now you've got that specific situation and the emotion, rate the intensity of that emotion for you on a scale of 0 to 10. So like 10 being the most and 0 being the least. So are you at an 8, 6, 7, 10, 0, 4? Whatever that is, just rate your emotion on the scale. Got it? Okay. So then we want to do our priming statement. So this statement is related to our emotions, but also setting us free from those emotions. So you say to yourself, even though that's when you insert your emotion, I am angry, I am frustrated, I am sad, I am angry at my friend, I am angry at the situation, whatever it is. So even though I love and accept myself. And you're going to say this statement a few times to really kind of make it sit right with you. So it could be, even though I'm angry, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm frustrated at myself, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm scared, I love and accept myself. And that is your statement that you are going to use. And you may have a few different situations that are bothering you right now, and that's fine. So you may want to work through a few, but focus on one for now. So have that in your mind. And then we are going to go through the tapping sequence. So we are going to be tapping on the kind of the soft side of your hand here. You're going to be tapping where the inner eyebrows are. And then you're going to be tapping on the outside of your eye, but not touching your eye, just on the outside of your eye. Going to be tapping on the lower rim of your eye socket directly underneath your eye. You're going to be doing the fleshy part between your nose and your lip. Then you'll be going to looking at the indentation right underneath your lower lip. Then you're going to be just below kind of your collarbone. The collarbone there, just underneath that. And then just about 3 or 4 inches underneath your arm, just kind of for people that wear bras, kind of on your bra line, and then on the crown of your head. So we're going to be going through that sequence, and you're going to be using 2 or 3 of your fingertips, and you're going to tap them 6 to 10 times each. So when we go through it, you're going to be saying your statement out loud. So even though I feel overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. So you've set your statement, you've rated how you're feeling, And now we're gonna go through the tapping technique together. So say it out loud. Even though I love and accept myself. So I'm gonna use even though I'm overwhelmed, because I think that it's an emotion that a lot of us are feeling right now, but you choose one that works for you because of how you're feeling right now, what emotion is really bothering you. So here we go. Even though I am overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I am overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I am overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I am overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I love and accept myself. And that's a sequence. And when you come to the end of the sequence, you want to really ask yourself, how are you feeling? What's your emotion? Go back to your rating and really kind of ask yourself, has my emotion changed? Do I feel any more free from that emotion? And as we said, all of these areas are related to the meridians in your line, related to your energy flow. You are releasing, you are becoming free of that emotion. And if you do it and you've kind of gone down a few points on your emotion, so if you've gone from an 8 to a 5, that may be good enough for you, or you may want to try it again. And you just go through the same sequence, doing it, saying it out loud, tapping, as I said, 6 to 10 times, going through. And also that if you want to do another statement, that's fine too, at the top of your head. And you may want to move on to another statement, so something else is bothering you. And work through the same. And with regular practice, knowing all of these becomes second nature. But it's just practicing. And you'll see in the ebook, there's a nice illustration of where you go. And you just want to keep going until you feel at peace and feel relaxed and kind of more resilient, because that's what we're here, right? So try that out and see how you get on. And it's a great technique, and it is one that is super simple, and it's linked to our emotional freedom. It's linked to our emotional regulation. It's allowing us to accept our emotions, but also to be able to do something about it. So going back to those 3 C's, it's really allowing us to have that positive outlook, to have that optimism. And I think by doing so, we are putting ourselves in a place where we're able to build our inner resilience. We're able to tap in to really our inner strength, being able to use all these psychological tips and techniques to be able to help you to be able to bounce back to difficult things, be able to work through the rest of this year, and be able to work through whatever else life may throw at you. I really hope you have enjoyed the workshop, and I urge you to look at the ebook, to practice the skills. We have gone over a lot. We've spoken about the 3 C's of resilience. You've understood kind of how resilience is there and really how it can impact on your mental health. We've gone through being able to challenge your negative thinking, being able to change your core beliefs or your negative core beliefs. We've gone through emotional regulation, and we've gone through the emotional freedom technique, the tapping technique. All of them can be super, super helpful for building your inner and outer resilience. And you may choose to use all of them, or you may choose to pick a few that you really resonated with and you thought that they would really work for you. But I would say just to practice them, to really practice them, get your head around them and get them into kind of things that you can just call on when you need. So it's in your toolbox. And if you've got these things in your toolbox, you're going to be more able to deal with difficult life events and being able to be more resilient. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and take care, stay safe.